All right, we're going to start in a couple minutes. Treats on the side table. More healthy treats this time, and in honor of New Year's resolutions and all that comes with that. There are water and soft drinks on the bottom shelf of the fridge in the break room, which is 2 doors down on the right if you want something. The Keurig is topped off, and there is coffee. You've got regular, hot cocoa, and cider available. So if you want to get yourself a drink, now's a good time to do it. And we're going to get at it in just a couple minutes here. How's that? Anybody still need to sign in? I do. All right, send that down. Mr. Jay's way, please. Good. All right. We're going to get started here. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out on what is a really busy week here. We have a full agenda today for sure. And you know, as Shannon and I were talking about putting the agenda together, this is going to be a big meeting because we're going to start putting some meat on the bones here. So this is exciting. We've been working hard, having some good insight, and done a comprehensive job of getting feedback. Now we're going to start putting things together. So long agenda, and I know some people have to leave early, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So we'll get out of here. So the first thing I want to do is just do a quick review of parameters with you, and that's on the cabinet up on the front of the room there. So we don't have a whole lot of constraints. We just have a few, and those constraints are it's got to be sustainable, and in that we need to consider total compensation. So that's all the pieces of compensation that'll come to bear, and it's got to be balanced with the other significant needs in the district. Just a quick review of what those are. First of all, we have 2 other employee groups that this process will be going on with as well. We know that we have some very significant curriculum needs in the district. We know that we have some technology needs in the district, and we know that we have some facilities needs in the district. So we just, the pot of money is so big, and we just need to keep that balance in mind. Whatever we come up with has to be manageable, and we don't have a large central office. And so, we need to, how many moving parts do we need? Just enough that we can carry this out. And so that will be important. And a clear view of future potential compensation. That was very important to the school board as they gave the directive to begin this work, that we want to be able to give people a clear view of what their potential compensation will be in the future. So, not a long list of must-haves, but things that we need to consider as we go at this work today. So next I want us just to do a review of our identified priorities. So we did our comprehensive survey, got a lot of great feedback. Anybody feel like they need to look at those results again? Okay, I have them with me if you need some. But you'll recall then last time we met, we worked on identifying some things that were going to guide our work going forward. So I saved the sheets. There's one over there that didn't have any stickers on it that I put in the corner, but you could look at it if you want. But as we look at this, some things really rose to the top. Okay, one was placement most closely matching education and experience. So we know that we've got to do something to get people close to what their true level of education and experience looks like. We delineated that lanes and steps ought to consist of years and credits earned. And remember, we talked about a couple different ways, a couple different thoughts on that, but that's what rose at the top. Lanes and steps equal years and credits earned. So that'll be an important piece of it. And the third one really revolved around committee work. And just, we had identified curriculum committee, but we know there's all kinds of other committees that are taking place too. So some sort of compensation for people that are leading those efforts and for people that are participating as as committee members. So does that sound like what we talked about last time in your mind's eye? All right. Well, so So I'm kind of excited because I'm gonna put one up on the board for us to start to do something with here, okay? You'll recall that in our comprehensive survey that we did, we surveyed about health insurance, some different pieces about health insurance. Shannon's gonna have a health insurance update for us later, but one of the pieces that we talked about was cash in lieu, okay? So just real quick review. The concept of cash in lieu would be if somebody who has the ability to have health insurance somewhere else, maybe through a spouse's plan or something like that, would have the ability to not take the district's insurance, be able to provide proof of insurance elsewhere, and receive some cash payment for that. And that was a piece that on our survey, I think people were pretty emphatic that we ought to take a look at. So let's talk about that. Shannon, can you give us a little bit of a review on what we're seeing kind of in this region about what cash in lieu looks like in the CISA 11 area, part of North Conference?
So it ranges anywhere from about 2,000, obviously in a smaller district, up to 6K in a larger district as a cash payout. And that can come on a month or a bi-monthly payroll. That would come on bi-monthly payroll. You could have it in a lump sum. Some people put that into an HSA. It would overall be a cash payout that would be taxable, but still a cash payout.
And how much are people getting by, like if they have a spouse working in our district right now, how much are they gaining from not paying the, what is it, 12%?
Yep, so they would gain it would be applicable to, spouses within the district that one carries the insurance, the other doesn't, so they would be getting whatever the deemed amount would be, whether it's 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, whatever this committee decides.
So we're not doing anything with that right
So
now.
that's,
Right
so
now.
this would be on top of
Yep.
not paying the 12%.
Yep.
So,
It would,
What's our current family?
family premium or
Yeah,
family premium per month? I would have to double check what I.
Well, I'm just thinking about like for the year. What's that?
In total.
I would say 22,000 or somewhere
That's
thereabout.
the plan cost. Premium,
Yeah.
what you pay per year is probably right a
I'm
little
just
trying to
over
get
to
2,000.
12%.
So what? So take 12% of
Yeah.
of that figure, yeah. So it's certainly 2,200, 2,500, somewhere around there would be a pretty close estimate, I would think. So let's get something on the board here. What do you think is a reasonable figure for us as we take this next step in our work to at least start getting some things in place for cash in lieu? First of all, are we agreed that's something we want to include? Okay, I'm seeing heads going north and south. Anybody saying that I need to know more or I don't like it?
I guess my only concern if we look ahead, because insurance is so unpredictable at this point,
Mhm.
that I don't wanna put too much on this and then have there be a situation like in a year or two where we have like a lot of spouses who are working, like, let's say in Shell Lake,
Mhm.
and their insurance policy is better than ours, we have a bunch of people jump ship,
Yep.
and then that impacts our plan,
Ah.
possibly.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna spend really focus on this too much when it could eventually hurt us. I'm not saying it will, but it could, where years ago we were looking at, insurance so much and we weren't taking pay because of our insurance rates. So we lost gain with pay,
Mhm.
where I don't wanna lose pay now for this where we could potentially get hurt by this.
Because we have so few people, our policy goes
Yeah,
up
so I
super
guess
high.
that's my
yeah.
thing, how will, if we put too much on that, will that impact us later on? Where, is it better
Yeah.
to look more at the salary schedule or the insurance at this point? I don't know, I guess that's kind of what I was
Have you
wondering.
done some analysis in the past about
Yeah,
just
so-
kind of estimating?
If we pay, I don't think it is feasible for us to go much more above 6,000 for a payout on a cash in lieu of. And if you figure, plan cost for a family is right around 20,000 right now, so you're having a savings to the district of 13,000 for every person that would carry a family plan that would leave off of our plan.
Mhm.
So So it says $13,000 savings, and when you compound that with, maybe you have 10 or 11 of them. So that's a significant savings that can be used elsewhere within the district, such as on the salary schedule. And you're right, you might see that start to balance out if we have more people leaving, but you have to remember, as more people leave, the insurance costs are gonna get less expensive because they're coming off your plan, and what you're paying them out in their pocket is less than what we're paying in insurance costs. Does that make sense?
Have you ever done any estimating about maybe how many people might be in a situation where they'd look at a cash in lieu option?
I believe we did a survey that first year, and I don't know off the top of my head, I do know we have about 9 or 10 spouses within the district that would right off the bat be applicable. I don't know how many people outside of that would be off the plan.
So you contrast that with how many people we have taking insurance. So we have I think we had 99 family plans, and I want to say around 40 individual plans. So I think unless we had a really large group of people that said, hey, I'm going to take the cash in lieu and get out of this insurance, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact. And we did check that with our broker as well, and that they concurred with that as well. They wouldn't see that being an undue hardship right now. I think you're wise to say, hey, down the line it's something that we need to keep an eye on, because again, if you had 50% of your employees not in the health insurance pool, things would look different for those that were still in it. So does that give you a little bit of information?
Like I said, I guess I was trying to figure out,
What's the right amount?
a couple years ago, things changed quite a bit where we had to offer, because of laws,
Yep.
you had to offer insurance to the employees, so I guess, who knows, in a couple years it could change, and then
Good.
you don't have to offer insurance if you have under 500 employees, and then we're all looking to pay for our insurance, and then we've lost out on pay versus insurance, and I guess that's, and we can't plan on that,
No.
but I guess I don't wanna think that it could ever happen either.
And I guess maybe to put it a different way, I don't see offering cash in lieu affecting the salary schedule and what goes on it
Okay.
at all. Does that help?
That helps.
Okay.
But on the other hand, like, that was the difference for me when I went and I was looking at Shell Lake. They were able to offer me $5,000 cash in lieu, and that brought me right up to the salary that I got here at Spooner. So it might make you more competitive to people if they don't have to take it, that bump of salary.
It's nothing to sneeze at,
Right.
that's for
Right.
sure.
Right.
And the district I came from, we had a pretty robust cash in lieu offering, and that was the tipping point for more than a handful of employees that came on board during my time there, definitely, because it's a pretty good bump. But but current law is you have to have health insurance, gotta have it. So people that would say, hey, I wanna do the cash in lieu, have to provide evidence of insurance someplace else. You can't just say I don't want health insurance and not have it someplace else and get the money, so. What's somebody throw a figure out for us to bat around a little bit.
Well, Shell Lake was 5.
Shell Lake's
So that's
5.
kind of a- Oh, yeah, that's right, income.
And what are they paying? Is it 12% also?
I don't know. I just know it was 5 because one of our teachers are there on ours.
So that Act 10 standard is the, 12.6%, so, I would think almost every district would seek to be Act 10 compliant and have that piece of it, so I would probably pretty
Shell
standard.
Lakes is $5,000 a year.
I know, but what do they pay?
I don't know. Lori and I have been taking this insurance. She's been taking the $5,000, so.
So Colin and Andrea do too.
You like that $5,000 figure?
Well, if this school offered a little more, I mean, it might have me just, take the in lieu of and go to hers. I mean, it's.
Well, that's why we're having the discussion now.
5,500.
500?
But I'd also like, I'm not sure if the law allows for that, if there's some sort of a catastrophe, where, let's say your spouse loses their insurance, would you be able to hop onto the schools?
So there's an enrollment period, and I don't know what that looks like, but
Yep, so there's an open enrollment that we have, and then after that, we can allow people onto the plan for a catastrophic or life-changing event, is what
Right.
they deem it, so a birth, you know, something like
someone
that.
loses a
Or
job,
child.
something
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Going about 5,500. All right, that gets us stake in the ground here. So, all right, well, there we go. There's our first piece of the plan. Good deal.
And,
Okay.
Is this also for married employees here, that, where one of them would get that?
Yep. It is. Okay, so the next one I wanted us to work on and discuss a little bit is that committee leadership and membership piece. I want to kind of frame things up for you here, because I think in every building things operate a little bit differently and you have different groups working on things. I think for us to include something in a plan that's a district plan, we have to have a little bit tighter definition on it. And so one that came to my mind is this. There's been some recent legal things that have occurred in the state around the open meeting law, and actually it's impacted you in this group because you were appointed as members of this by the school board. And the reason for that is it's a recent court decision about open meeting, and you know what it says is, this is a Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, that when a governmental body adopts a rule authorizing the formation of committees and gives them power to take collective action, they're deemed created by rule and subject to the open meeting law. So I'm giving you that definition because I'm going to throw this out for discussion. What if we said committees, whether you're leading it or you're a member, by definition are going to be committees that the board has taken some action on membership?
So handbook committee, this committee, or if you report up to the board for something, curriculum, something like that, that would be deemed a committee that you would get paid on.
That's what I'm throwing out for discussion.
But not, for example, a PBIS committee or a curriculum committee, or what about things like DI coaches or those kinds of
DI
things? Does that
coaches
fall
are-
under something else?
DI coaches are already on the co-curricular schedule.
Okay.
Yep.
So this would be
Leadership
different.
teams on the co-curricular schedule.
PBS, I mean,
PBS is not on there, but it will be on there next year.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. So if you have, like in our building, we have PBIS, we have family engagement, meals rallies,
Character education.
and character ed,
Not directed by the board though, directed by your principal, correct?
directed by our principal.
So not considered then,
But PBIS would be.
PBIS because it's a district initiative
So,
Hey,
where it
I'm just
requires
throwing it out
coaches.
for
Yeah, we're just
discussion.
talking.
Right,
yeah,
That's
yeah,
all.
right.
We're
under
just
a
trying to
different category,
clarify.
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
still maybe get compensated.
is it because of, I mean, I get it, because a lot of those other ones are beyond the normal working hours, like PBIS, sometimes we meet 5 times a month. Is it because it's beyond the hours?
Yeah, we're just talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
I'm
guys
just
want-
trying
do
to
you
throw
wanna put a
something
param-
out as a place to
well,
start
that's-
discussion.
That's new this year at the middle school.
Yep.
Whereas kind of before it was like, if you want to join this team, kind of we'd appreciate it. And this year is kind of the directive of everyone's going to be on at least one committee. And so we have a PBS one, we have a Rails rally, we have a family engagement, and everyone's at least on one thing. And so just at the middle school, if it was, you know, the PBS one got compensated and the other ones didn't,
Yep.
I'd probably join the PBS.
Well, yeah, right,
You know,
right.
Smart
But
you are.
that's different at the elementary and high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
That's-
So maybe
That's
it
where we're
looks-
coming from.
And
Yeah.
once this gets implemented, maybe that looks different at the building level and how you become part of those teams. I mean, I'm assuming that Mr. Larrabee is the one that said everybody will join one of these committees, but maybe it's different than how it's implemented next year, once we decide.
Right, that's only
Yep.
this year.
Yep.
Right. So, that's just where we're at right now.
But one of the
We've always
things,
had committees though, that we had to join. Last year we, it was optional, but not, we've always had committees that we had to join at least one.
Are the committees meeting?
PBIS though was established, so like it was the people who went to the training that were on the committee, so there was no option to join in or to be a part of it. It was like, if you went to the training, that's your committee.
You're on that.
So going forward, are you gonna open that up and then say if you wanna be on it? Like, I think that it could cause some issues. I agree with Ryan, I feel like it could be,
The only thing that I'm trying to say is that group meets a
You
lot.
put in a lot of
A
time
lot.
to TBIS.
It has to do a lot.
Behind the scenes.
I mean, like, people on that committee might actually say, I'd rather go to yours.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that because I'm on that. So, I get that,
Do you
but I
set,
totally get your point too.
do you set an hour standards, you know, or how many times you meet a month standard, or, so I mean, say, do we just decide what gets paid and what doesn't get paid? Is it a committee that meets 5 times a month, is it a committee that meets after school, before school? You-
Does it mean more work year after year, or is this just getting it?
It'd be good to, it'd be good to put some
It
parameters
depends
on
on the
that
year.
for us. Like, I'm on the
I
wellness
mean, as a
committee, we meet a
framework.
couple times a year, don't need to get compensated for that. But if there is like a multi-a-month one, probably be nice to, you know, if they're on that, so. I don't know what type of framework we establish for that, but.
Yeah, we gotta put some shape around it here. That-
Is it
That's
PBIS
kinda
an initiative
the
type?
challenge of our group.
It's an initiative type of, through the board, that PBIS. It's an initiative, not in, it's not at the elementary, is it just in the middle? school?
No, it's at all, it's at
And high
elementary
school
school,
starting it.
and high school starting.
Do your leadership teams get paid for their time?
Leadership.
All leadership
So
teams
that's
get paid.
just the only
Yeah.
one group getting paid right
Yeah.
now?
Leadership teams and at the high school, your class advisors, I don't know your class advisors at the middle school.
We have advisors, but it's part of our day.
So,
But-
class
Class
advisors.
But
advisors.
PBIS is set to go in the handbook, you said?
And the co-curricular.
And you said you thought it was at the high school?
It's gonna start.
It's
Supposed to. Is
It's
it
what?
for all PBIS, or is it just coaches? Because I
It
know
was-
Mitch talked about doing,
Coaches.
Having coaches.
Yeah, so more clarification, it's the coaches that would be the co-curricular.
yeah, I don't think it's gonna be.
So would it be the entire PBIS?
no, so like in our building,
So
we
all
just
the
had this
hours
discussion
that
on
we put
Monday,
on
it would
it
be,
was-
yes, it would be Ashley and Britta.
And
And
we
our
don't have
building.
a choice. Interesting.
Right, so, but that's like, that could get it into a hairy situation though, right? Because like, people might want to be on it and people might want to be off of it, right?
Yeah.
On who's a coach?
Well, so we just,
are.
no, you have one building coach and then you have an
As
extra.
far as it's Nancy.
Yours is Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy's our coach.
Is this one maybe you wanna mull on a little bit,
Yeah.
and when we come back together, we say, let's talk about some ideas? We're not gonna be successful having something that's not defined, and this is a district level piece, so maybe if you're mulling on it, some of the example that we had, and is in our drive, you can look back at that and take a look at it, and, you know, again, we're not handcuffed by any specific parameters on this, other than, you know, we do need to keep total compensation in mind, so what we come up with is gonna be part of whatever the bottom line is. All right, well, we'll do that then. We'll continue the discussion on committee leadership and committee membership when we meet next time. I'm gonna hand it off to you, Shannon.
Thanks. So just a couple of financial updates that have happened since the last time that we met. CPI has been set, so we do know that CPI will be 2.13% for the base wage. Anything above that would be considered supplemental, so that would be the max for the base wage. Something to consider when we're talking about possible increases on the salary schedule and whatnot. And then, as David had mentioned earlier, we did get an update on insurance, and unfortunately, it's not the update that we were looking for. We were looking to try to join a consortium in which we could spread our risk over a large group of people, and we did get invited into the consortium. The consortium was going out to bid for insurance, and the carriers that were bidding on the insurance won't bid if our group is included. So we have some high cost claims that's detrimental to our loss ratio right now. And with that said, we did get a quote back from our broker at a increase of about 12%, which equates to around $281,000. So that's a wrench to our budgeting.
That's the opposite direction
That's
of
where we
where we
wanted
were
to go.
hoping to go with
Yep.
this.
Have we ever thought about like trying to, or hiring a nurse practitioner and staging that person at like one of the buildings for the week, or maybe even splitting it with Shell Lake, and then maybe that would eliminate some of our like ER visits and.
You know, and looking at the data, because we review the data quarterly, that's not the problem. We just have a couple of high-cost ongoing claims right now that, that's what's hurting us right now. So, and that's what we have insurance for. And, 2 years from now, we could be in a much better place, but I don't know, it's not necessarily the day-to-day or the ER visits that are hurting the plan. But down the road, I know, is it Rice Lake? No.
Yeah.
Is it that they have an in-house, right?
It's kind of a nightmare.
And I can imagine that it
Yeah,
would be.
because that person's only there like once every week or something, and in order for their insurance to be, so they're sending their people like all the way over to
Because
Stevens
they're-
Point to
they're
get services
self-funded.
done, they're self-funded, it's not working real well.
Yep.
They're gonna have to relook at it next year. If they could combine with Rice Lake Weighing System, who's doing the same thing, it might work really well, but right now, it's a bit of a nightmare, and they're not at all happy with it. So,
So maybe it's not exactly a no, but a not yet for participation in the co-op, and what the hope is and for the well-being of the individuals and for our district as well, that those conditions and those people experience some more stable and some better health, and maybe a year from now, we're in a better spot to get it. But it's disappointing. The co-op members approved us, but 5 insurance carriers were bidding on the business, and all 5 said, no quote, if Spooner's in it, so that's pretty definitive.
Is this increase maintaining our current deductibles now?
Different carrier.
Different carrier, same. That's not to say that we aren't going to discuss optional plans, something else that we could do to lower the cost, but this was very new information that we received on Monday.
Got it on Monday afternoon, and they're trying to provide a quote on something that looks like what we have
Yep.
now in terms of deductible and coverage and things like that. So not so cheery, and certainly has an impact on what we're doing in this group, but it's important information to have, because that bottom line, that total compensation is really what's gotta be an overarching consideration in this work. So we're gonna talk about kind of what things might look like and how that replacement, how we maybe
Oh,
get some
yes, I'm
ideas on
sorry.
how to get some information on that?
Yeah. So one of the with most dots, I guess I'd say, is, you know, the placement piece. And that's something that, since we haven't been doing this for so long, I think 13, 14, we need to gather that information in the district office in order to put a number, and it's actually become more critical in knowing this new insurance number to find out what that potential dollar figure is. And I know that Dave and I had mentioned the last time that we thought close to 500,000. I still think it's going to be close to that, but we need to have a more concrete number. So we need to pull that information in. And what do you guys feel the best way to do that is? You know, an email out to staff asking them to report back where they believe they are, credits, steps, etc. One-on-one meetings with everybody to verify that information.
I think you should verify it.
Yeah, well, at one time, every year, we would get a form that we had to fill out and turn in by a certain date,
Okay.
saying, you know, if we were gonna move up steps, or, you know, and so it was a way for the school district to plan for the following year. And I don't know if there's something similar to that we could fill out, and, or, you know, for staff, maybe if they haven't turned in paperwork, to stop in the office sometime to see what's there, you know, so they can make sure that's updated, because I'm sure there are people who haven't turned in anything for the past few years because there was no
No
reason.
point to it,
Yeah,
was there? Yeah.
it wasn't wanted, really. So, so I mean, just to make sure, give people that opportunity and not say you have to schedule an appointment like what's in the handbook, and just say, we're gonna have, you know, files available these nights if you wanna review your file, and there will be forms for you to sign saying where you're at, and you need to have the paperwork to support that. I don't know if that would be easiest, but I think for some people, just for curiosity purposes, I think maybe they would like to see what's in their files too, just to make sure that what they had in there is still there, or.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
So it'd be a form that would go to everybody, and it'd be kind of
Information.
And there should be one around, I think.
Yeah.
There's one
There's
sitting
probably
around,
been
one.
one.
was
Yeah.
a district form of some sort. Okay.
Yeah.
And it, so it would be like, tell us about education and experience and,
Yeah.
okay? Right?
That would cover the education piece of it, like how many credits you had.
We can get the steps based off of a higher date within the
Yeah.
system, so I should have
Okay,
been more
so the
specific. I'm sorry.
steps, you're okay with, okay.
Yep.
What are we going to do with people who have been, those PDP people, who may have been here for 5 years, have renewed their PDP but don't have credits because there was no reason to get credits? How do we compensate them, and where do we put them? What do we count for that? Because I know there are some districts that have said, okay, well, that's worth this many credits. That's worth like one set of 6 credits, or whatever the rest of us would have gotten to renew our license. So I think we have to think about them as well, and where that might put them, because there hasn't been a reason for some of them to work on credits. There's been no motivation to do that, or no reason to do that across the state or across our district. So I think we also have to consider where we would plunk them based on that as well.
There's also the
I
idea
also have
about,
a question for people like me who had to do a long-term sub. Is my start year during that long-term sub year, is it after? So I have, you know, almost 2 years like that under my belt. And there's a lot of people that have a year that they were on long-term subs, so does that count for me?
Yeah, that's a discussion. I mean, do you guys want that, those years to count? Do you want, it to be from you receive your contract, a full-on contract? That's up to you.
and those who came into the district with more than 5 years, I know they used to max out at 5 years or something.
That's what I
Yeah,
Are we
each
are we
max was
still
5.
gonna plan
That's,
that?
that's
or-
something we're gonna have to decide.
Or what about those contracts that came in that negotiated a wage when they signed the contract? That really didn't deal with steps and like.
Well, then there's, we have some people that are off the current schedule, so, but that still would change validating where they are. They'd still have to validate where they are in order to move to maybe they have to go up a step or across or something.
What if they are above the
we won't move them down.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be fair to take anybody backwards on
No.
this.
Because that brings up the conversation of how do we handle, the labor market force? You know, do we have something else that says, we know it's hard to hire tech ed teachers, we know it's hard to hire special education teachers.
Mhm.
So do we have that, that's part of that labor market force discussion.
I think they still should get validated for 5 years.
You wanna keep the max at 5? We'll have that discussion.
I think if we did that, I think, I don't know, there's been other years where they've allowed much more than 5, so if we kept some people at 5 and others at 20 when it wasn't in the district.
Going forward, the new standard would be, if we wouldn't move anybody back, we would say this would be our new standard going forward, which it has been 5, it was 5 years
Mhm.
previously, right?
Yeah.
5 years.
There was 5
Yeah.
years.
So we do understand there's a gap in there where some things might have gotten off track, but we say going forward, the max is 5, whatever you guys choose it to be, 5, 7. And that's where we would max out the years of service then. Does that, maybe not, does that answer your question?
So what about the people that are here though, right now? Because I've had several people in my building, they're like, okay, well, I was 6 years. One of them actually was 18 years at a different school. She was given 5, you know, like when she started. Now is she gonna get credit now for all 18 years?
Get the other 13 added on when we
Yeah.
go to this. No, I think that would be a discussion that we'd have, because
Yeah.
the standard would still be max of 5 years. So she'll get, say this is her second year here, she get her 5 plus 2, she or he, that
Yeah.
person,
Okay.
would get 5 plus 2, so, does that help?
Yeah.
I'm understanding what you're saying. I was under the impression when I was told that like this year's teachers were granted like their total years of experience. And so if you.
That's that handbook piece that we've discussed, that, you know, there was a
If that's-
board-approved handbook that brought people in at education and experience. and-
Right.
And, maybe in hindsight, not the best move.
So I was saying like those people just got really lucky compared to everyone else.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and, you know,
So that's why we're here, those, to help fix everybody.
yeah, you know, we're.
And if you're on the handbook meeting, maybe you have that as a discussion, like we need to talk about this.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be fair to take anybody backwards. It just.
So would they stay
Well, I
frozen
don't-
until
yeah,
the year's
it wouldn't- you can't
experience
take them back.
catches up to them?
I think most of them probably are at the top and that's where they would stay. So I don't think it would matter.
I think there's,
I think it's also gonna depend on whatever sort of table you come up with, you know, whatever a max would be for years on that, because, you know, the examples we saw were all over the place, so.
and then also talking about max, let's talk about when we, you know, the current one, I think it maxes out at 14 or 15 years. So in the current one, there's nothing after that. Is that something that, that you would want to keep? Or I've come from the districts where it's a flat rate of $1,000 every year after you max out.
That's what it used to be. There was
Oh.
long
Oh,
ago,
it wasn't, maybe it's just not written in this one that I'm,
an old one,
Yeah, I thought you
right?
get like
Well-
so much money for credits above and beyond or something like that. Like we had maxed out at MA plus 40, but you got $50 a year. There's something like that,
There
some
was-
extra money for extra credits you got above and beyond.
But did you also get extra money for every year? I thought you
I
got
don't
for
think so.
years above
Not
that.
that I was never
If it
near there,
was-
so I
I
don't
wasn't
think
either, but I
so.
remember reading
Yeah.
that line underneath that salary schedule
Yeah.
saying, someone
I
like
guess
Bob
not.
Thornley or someone who's been here 30 years would probably know Larry from the history of that, because I thought there was something that said beyond this 18 years or 14 years, then
Well, there
it
must be
would
an
be
old
a.
contract laying around here somewhere that's got that.
Yeah,
but is that
I
something
can-
you wanna continue, where there's a flat rate after, on the BA, or on the bachelor's, it's after year 11, BA 10, 12, BA 20, 12, BA 30, master's plus 10 is 13, and then anything above that, you max out at 14 years.
I think that makes sense, because if you're just gonna sit there at that rate, I don't know what the motivation is to, yeah,
Even if it's not every year, if it's
like every 2
2
years.
or something, so there's something instead of
Right.
just sitting there.
Like a longevity. thing
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, kind of like a longevity piece, or,
And maybe it'd be more sustainable too, I don't know.
Versus people that are just
You know what I'm saying, because I'm sure it's
Okay,
different.
so they're having discussion down here that it might upset people that we're not getting credited for our years of service. But my thought was that the people who have been here, so like say Tracy's been here for 7 years, she would get those 7 years, correct?
Yeah,
She's not.
I guess I'm not understanding. Okay.
Okay, so if she was here for 7 years and she's not received a lane change in the 7 years that
That's
she's
what the
been here.
placement was
That's
supposed to be
what's
matching
getting
years.
where we're
supposed
to do
Yeah,
that.
that's what we're talking
Right,
about.
but what I think what was confusing was that there was talk about people who came in from the outside with lane changes, right, and were credited, you know,
They
more
would've-
than,
They would have not came in with lane changes,
Or
they
was
would
more
have
than
just
5 years or
placed,
whatever.
placed where they placed on the salary
Right.
schedule, yes.
So I think the confusion part was that people who have been here still have the opportunity to possibly get credited for those years of service, but the people who came in with already that bump for their years of service would not, right?
We would have, yeah, we would
They've
have
already
them,
been.
they're already there, so if you look at
Already there.
person A,
Okay,
yeah, they're already, I don't know.
They're already there.
They're already there, yeah, so there wouldn't be anywhere for them to go.
No.
The only place really for them to go, would be potentially backwards if they got placed higher than where they would be.
right.
Well, I just,
Yeah, do you have a specific, can
well,
you
one of our
use an
parameters
example?
is we're not using specific people, but
Well, can
say,
you use it
say
without a
person
name?
A came this year with 15 years of experience and never been in district before, and they get paid for, as a 15-year teacher.
Okay,
And then take a person who came in the year before that with a different set of parameters and had 15 years of experience but got paid for 5.
right.
And now they get to get bumped up to 6 and get credit for maybe this next year. But
They would.
if those years of experience were mostly not in Spooner, like, then they don't get, they're kind of capped at that 5 plus whatever else they
Right.
hear, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing, I'm understanding that.
Yep,
That's kind of a harder pill to swallow for person B,
yeah.
because they're still a long ways away from person A when they have the same amount of time in.
You know, we have these, you know, we can only do so much.
Right,
That's
yeah,
the
and that's our
problem.
limited
Yeah,
pot, so,
yeah.
and you're still anticipating about $500,000 in, trying to even people out and still
Yeah.
not, even out the years piece with them, is that?
It could potentially be once we start looking at, you
If
know,
we
we
were going for all the years, even,
Right.
take up that person B who might be 15 years, but a lot of them like were before Spooner, and they wouldn't get to go up to the 15, maybe they'd go up to 7 or 8 or something.
I don't know if we have a lot of people that are in that situation. I think we're talking a very small amount of people.
Okay,
Um,
I just know some people in that.
But I think,
Yeah,
I think
but I
that,
know
that file review and that, that update's really important. And, the $500,000 figure that we came up with is an estimate, but I've had conversations with probably more people than I can count on my fingers saying, hey, I'm 12, 14, 16,000 bucks behind. And it doesn't take a whole lot of people like that, or a larger group that are $5,000 or $6,000 or $8,000 behind, and you're talking some pretty serious money here. So there are no hard, fast rules on it right now, and that's part of what we're doing. And I'm wondering if we ought not to shift gears a little bit right now and identify what you see the key questions being in this piece of the discussion right now. Like what are some things that we need to define? And I'm hearing one of them is years of service, regardless if they're Spooner service or
Right.
somewhere else, and what the ceiling might be on that. Is that, am I
Yeah.
capturing the essence of that question correctly?
Yeah, and we might just be in a financial situation, we can't get there. Just the bummer in hindsight, I guess, is there's like a 1 year outlier, maybe this year, that makes it harder to match everyone else.
There sure
which
are,
stinks for all
yeah.
the other years behind.
Yeah. So, so under the topic of years of service, it's how many years to credit, right? Is that one of them?
I think and if you're talking about the question of what to look at, it might be really valuable for us to just get the information from people first and then determine what we're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
Because maybe you wanna ask the question, how many years of experience do you have in education? How many years of experience do you have here? Because I had probably 20 years, between 15 and 20, coming here and got 5. Well, you're not gonna wanna go and pay me for 30 years of experience, which is what I have now.
I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, Ron, don't say we wouldn't want to.
I know what you're saying.
So I think maybe the question that we need to find out is, how many years of experience do people have in education? How many years of experience do they have here? And that could at least give us a little bit of working information to see, like, can we even afford to go back and give people, if we're talking about 1 or 2 people who have lots of experience somewhere else, came here, are on year 2, could we grandfather that in, but maybe we need that information first.
So how many years as a teacher,
Yes.
period? And
In
how many
education.
years as a teacher in school?
Here.
Okay,
Yes.
so then again, back to my question, do I get to count my long-term sub time here? Cause that,
That's a question.
My thought would be,
Yeah.
and this is just Rhonda talking, but as that one, in those situations where those people were long-term subs, they were in essence teachers.
You were in this
Just
district.
on a 1-year long-term sub. They were doing all the same things. In fact, some of them even went through educator effectiveness and were reviewed. So in my mind, they were teachers, just under a different format. So I would say we count those years, but that's Rhonda speaking.
Well, did some of those people negotiate a higher salary when they were hired? Because some people, when they got hired, or those first 2 years, they went in and renegotiated their contracts, and did they get a bump once they got a contract with Spooner? I don't know.
I don't know that either.
Because I know there are a few people who went up because they had a conversation, and so I don't know. But it's probably none of my business who did that, but if they were bumped up at that time, is that,
Well,
were
and
they
maybe
already
we need to
already
then know
compensated
what
for
level
that?
they came in at.
Well, we can't talk about individual compensation or anybody's specific compensation, so.
Right, no, I don't mean
Okay,
us.
Oh,
I just mean
okay.
generally speaking, so when you get that information, you could say, well, we've got a lot of people who were in this category, or a lot of people in that.
But I think
don't know
overall,
what.
no, but I think overall, are we gonna say that long-term sub years are going to be counted?
I think in
Yeah,
general.
set that-
it was
set that
kind of-
standard.
in the district.
It was kind of a make or break year, right?
I'm just asking,
Maybe
don't tell
wanted
me.
them back.
So I know when we were doing this wage distribution, we looked at a couple different things. If you were hired as a classroom teacher and that was your assignment for the whole year, and you came in with the understanding that you were hired as a teacher and the district just said, well, we can only do an LTS for, because it's done a little different here in Spooner than it's done elsewhere that way. I'd be good counting that. I don't think it'd be fair to count someone who comes in and they're 6 weeks in this classroom and 8 weeks in that classroom.
Yes.
That's different.
Yeah.
Those are more temporary assignments, and
Yeah.
those are not so much like contract teachers.
Yeah, I agree, totally
So
agree.
we're gonna set that,
Yeah.
LTS years count, okay.
Mhm.
So what are some other kind of the essential questions underneath that, the whole idea of placement that we need to flesh out?
I would find
What
out
about need-based?
what
If you're trying to find a hard-to-fill position,
That's kind of the labor market.
Yeah.
That Is that a common, do you get in there using credit card? You don't.
Oh, Claire does. Oh, Claire has it.
You know, I think the Larry's,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
If it's a
give
tough.
them care. I mean, that's way
And they got
the
that,
actual.
I think it's about.
Eau Claire does. I have Eau Claire's in here. Eau Claire had the labor market, because my nephew's making a ton of money because of that. Because he's a tech ed teacher. But then I think we have to figure out what is a hard to fill position
Well, and that
in
could
this
vary
area.
from year to year too.
Yeah,
You know, maybe there's a lot of college kids going into tech ed education now because they know there's a shortage. And in a couple
Or
of
maybe
years.
rather than salary scale,
You know,
we
I
offer
don't
it as a sign-up bonus or
You never
something.
know.
Yeah.
My time as
Exactly.
administrator, there's been,
Up to-
there were times where you couldn't turn around without bumping into a tech ed teacher looking for
Yeah.
a job, and look at the way that that's changed.
Well, yeah, or special ed. For years, people were going into special ed to get into regular ed
This was
positions.
a backdoor, yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, maybe rather than worry about placement on a salary schedule, we think about
Well, if I would.
just as a sign-up bonus or something. Just to
One-
give that
one-
care.
One shot.
Yeah, one
yeah,
shot.
I like that.
If you promise to stay here X number of years or something, you know.
Right.
So if you're here for 5 years, you'll get X amount of dollars as a bonus or something, just because.
Well,
Does Rice Lake still have the 5 years? Get your 2 years like put in there. Do you know? Is that how does that take our new teachers?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of places are, I mean,
I mean, I know they were sticking to that a couple of years ago.
yeah, I think a lot of places still are.
And they're still filling the positions, I guess is my point, you know,
is
it's
that,
Rice Lake.
a lot of places are at that 5, 6, or whatever,
Mhm.
but then, like Shannon mentioned, a lot of places are, that all goes out the window if you're a tech ed or special ed teacher. And maybe rightly so, whatever, but do we have to factor that into our, you know, how do we make our plan?
You know, I think it's the board's job to define some of those things. I think that, yeah, I think that's something that.
We don't need to really,
Well, I think we can certainly make some recommendations on it, but ultimately it's the board that says, you know, we're gonna hire someone or we're not gonna hire someone, so. So this goes on your list of things to mull on a little bit, because when we come back together next time, we're gonna have to throw some
It
ideas.
doesn't really give which one
It
it
just
what it
defines
doesn't
it
list,
because
define.
It's up to whoever, yeah,
Yeah.
defines if it doesn't say.
But I do like the idea of a signing bonus.
Well, even if you
One
would
time.
put, like, after 3 years or 5 years, that's when you would get it. I mean, show you have some longevity. And by that time, somebody might actually be putting down roots and not want to leave again.
So one last question I have before we start wrapping up is, and maybe it's something that we'll have to think about, but our starting salary, what are everybody's thoughts on our BA one, which going forward next year will be 37,530.
I personally think it should be 40.
Okay.
We need to get them here. We need to be
Anybody
more
else?
attractive than everywhere else.
Well, if
Yeah.
they aren't giving signing bonuses and we lost a couple of people for that reason, if we can come in strong, we're not signing bonus people, right?
Well, we were just having that conversation about the hard to fill positions.
Right,
Maybe
like
that's when
that,
we do
but
the
like
signing bonus.
just the general teaching positions.
I mean, they have some rooms and.
I think if you can get it out of the 30s, I think that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Look better,
Mhm.
more invasive. Would we consider, so we're saying that we would consider bumping that up to get in the door?
And how many people do, like, let's say that I'm wondering how many people are below that 40? Would we bump them up to 40 now?
Well, remember,
Well,
They're gonna get years of
They're gonna get years of service.
Okay, but I mean, So, I mean, that's my thing,
So-
I don't
so I-
wanna make
so
it too
I have-
much and
I
then
have some
have
ex-
it
They're gonna go.
be
I've had some
unfair.
experience with that, and you do wind up with people that have been in that district longer, that are getting less
Less
than
money.
people coming in the door.
Or they're
Because
gonna
if
play.
it's 5 years before they were bumped, you know, you're gonna have people that have been working here 3 years kind of making less than someone who comes in.
Unless we kind of go between and just say, okay, we're gonna bump up the new, I mean, people who were hired in the last, I don't know, whatever, 2 years. So we get them up to that level, and then the new people that are hired come in at that, I don't know. But I don't wanna sit in this room in a couple years and have people still be upset because we bumped it up and then, you know, we lost staff because they, you know, had already been hired here and they
They're made
left
it less,
because they can
yeah.
get 40 at Shell Lake and we can't, you know, they already missed out on that opportunity
So
here.
should it be like a minimum salary should be 40,000, almost to that point?
I suppose it depends on what the lanes and stuff look like. and-
Because then they bump up.
Well, it depends on.
Depending on what the jump is.
Yeah.
It started as
in that
36,794, so you came in last year at 36,794, one year would get you up to.
Mhm.
So, but then if you start hiring people at 40,000,
There's some inequities on your
Yes.
service.
Mhm.
Which I think would actually affect quite a few people.
you know,
And
so
even sign-up bonus would
Well, you
affect.
have people that came in 4 years ago that
are still.
were making what they were making when they came.
Well, yeah.
So you'd
So I
have to
mean, it-
bring them up to the 40 and then, and one more year they'd be bump up because they were there more. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It-
it's hard.
It's hard, it's very hard. It's
Yeah, 50% of your
things that
teachers
want-
have
I think
not
basic
been
numbers,
here.
you know, how many people are here.
How many people
Yeah.
are in the?
Is that below the 40 right now even, or?
What did you say it would be, what is it right now?
For what year is that? 18, 19, it'll be 37,530 with the 2% increase. That was pretty high.
So what happens to the people that are below that right now?
That's what we just been talking about here, yeah.
Yeah.
What do
Nothing right now,
What do you do?
because we're not, I mean, but for 18, 19, 18, 19, that's our goal, is to match, to get people off of that.
Where they should be.
And if
That's
we have
what the-
people that fall below it, then we'll have to, we will probably have to start having individual conversations about how we handle those people.
Okay.
You're never gonna catch everybody, guys. I mean, that's gonna be the problem here. We're gonna have a donut hole of people, and we have to figure out what to do with them. You're never gonna please everybody. You know, you're always gonna have somebody that's gonna be angry about
Right.
what you decide to do.
And I guess finding out that information, how many people would fall into that category. I think
Yep.
if we had some chart or something to kind of show, you know, without names, here's where our staff are on the spectrum and.
Or if we brought everybody up to that 40, this is what it's gonna cost us, this is how many people we have, this is what it would cost. I think maybe just getting that initial information would give us a starting point.
Yeah, and I think not bringing them to the 40 would be an issue, but then you have that years of service inequity, because now you're bringing people in that have, you know, maybe 0 years of service, but then you've placed people that have 3 or 4 years of service, and now you're back to that.
Right.
But then they should make a bump though when they, in a couple of years when they actually get that years of service, where they, you know, they'll shift. You know what I'm
They
saying?
shift up, yeah,
Yeah.
as they,
Because they'll shift sooner than the ones that I would just hire.
Yeah.
You know, they'll shift sooner on the
depending,
lanes
Depends.
with experience.
not lanes unless they have received credits,
Well, I
but
mean,
steps.
the
Yeah.
steps, they bump
Yeah.
up sooner on the steps than the person you just hired. That 37,540, that is with the 2.13 increase, is that what you?
No, that's with the two, you have to, that's with this year's 2% base wage
Right.
increase, yep, so it's 36,7, it was 36,794.
And then it'll bump up to 37, so
Right,
those
right.
people should bump up as well, correct?
No, not necessarily. I
Well,
guess I don't
That was,
understand the
I see
question.
that
what
was
you're
what I
saying.
just asked, and that's what
I
she just
see what
said,
you're saying.
not
Aren't we-
necessarily.
Isn't the 2.13 across the board? Everybody gets that bump?
If the board were to apply it,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If they were to, oh.
We're not saying, I'm just saying that's
I
what
got it.
CPI,
I see.
I wasn't saying that's what everybody's going to get, I'm just saying that's what CPI has been declared as
Okay.
for the Department of Labor.
And so that's what the
So if I
37,
just have
that
the
37,540 is with
And
that.
this is the base
That is with the-
wage, and
the
this
increase in
one,
base wage.
step two would be.
That happened this year.
Let's just say
Yeah.
That happened this year with,
40,500. So if I've been here 6 years,
Remember,
I would go
remember,
here,
the
right?
criteria
So we
for
couldn't have
receiving an
put everybody
increase this
on
year
the
was that you
new
had to
grid.
have a contract with Superior
Yeah,
School
so
District
then you're
last
going
year.
from
So
something
if you
like
had a contract last year at 36,794, you're right.
So how
This year
many
you get
people would that be?
37,530, but if you were hired at Superior School District starting July 1st, you
So
did
they're
not go up to
doing it.
37,530.
correct, okay, so it would be this year's, not last, okay, so it was
But it has
last
nothing
year's.
to do with going,
Got
this
it.
is just what the new base wage is.
Right, but I'm saying, I was thinking that if you were hired at that, because of the CPI, you would go up naturally with it, but you
Yeah,
have to.
but the CPI is not, it's not a given that
No.
it's gonna happen, it's just, that's the
That makes
max.
sense.
That's allowable
That's
without
a board
supplement.
decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so there's gonna be someone in between there that will not.
Well, but again, that goes back to the placement that we need to work on.
So we would play, just help me understand this. So if we make a new grid, and the base wage is, let's just say it's 40,000, or where you enter. If I've been here 3 years, you're gonna put me on that salary schedule, correct?
Are you under the 40,000 or are you over 40,000?
Under.
Oh.
Let's say you're under.
Let's say
Can't
I'm
move you
under.
backwards, can't move you backwards.
Right, so if I'm under the 40,000, you're just gonna place everybody on the new salary schedule, correct?
No, that would be something that we have to decide based on, okay, so whatever we make the BA one, we would have to decide if we have 10 people underneath that for range from 36,794 to 38,432. I think that's what that is the
The low range.
the low range before you
Okay.
get up to 40. Yeah, how are we going to move this? Are we gonna move them up to 40,000? I mean, that would seem right to do, but.
Right. Because we're
But
all
then
gonna
would you
have
also
to be
give them
put
years
on
of
that.
service, so it'd be their
Yeah.
base, you know.
Their
so
base
they
starts
would've
at
only
40.
been here for 3
So
years,
$3,000
so.
or $4,000
Yep.
like that.
So they would be bumped up to 40, but then say they had 5 years of service, and I'm just going off the old one. So really, they would be at 43,367, because that's where if you're just
Okay.
looking at the bachelor's steps, that's
Okay.
where the steps would be. So, you did,
But someone who had a year or two of experience could get jammed up in
yeah,
that.
yep,
You can fall in between.
they're gonna
Yeah.
fall in between. So where you'd start to see it tip would be if you had 3, 4, or 5, you're gonna get above the 40,000. If we left everything the way it is now. Because starting at year 3, you're at 40,082, and then year 4, you're at 41,732,
You know,
and year 5, you're at 43,367. So once you get into those years, then you're starting to see that they're a little bit ahead.
So really, it'd be the hires for this year. Because the hires for this year are upper left corner, right?
And last year,
In last year.
because they haven't moved,
Yeah, they
Yeah.
and we had quite a few last year,
Yeah.
so
We had
there's
6 this
probably
year,
more
so-
people than we think.
Last year we had a lot.
And
So
I
that's
still
why
think
I'm
you're looking at a big pool from the year before of those of us, like 3 out of the 4 on my team I know are underneath that 40 mark. So
Right, so that's
we
why
would
I'm
all be in
thinking-
that,
I think there are quite a
I think
few
so
people.
too,
Well, what does Hayward start at?
last second.
What'd you
Cumberland, what is Hayward in Cumberland, and can't we at least be
What their,
$1,000 more?
their VAs are, their step ones.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
have
we had that up there.
We have
We had
that.
that.
Yeah, that's in our
We're
shared
right in the
drive.
middle.
If you look at that
Yeah, we weren't on the
PowerPoint
low
that I did
end.
the first time.
But we weren't on the high end.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're just figuring out how to make it right with the people
I was just
that are
asking.
below the 40 right now.
Did you share that with us? Shannon?
It's in the
If
shared
we
It's in
decide
that-
to
it's
go
in that
with
shared
it, we
drive.
just-
I think you're
Maybe
right.
bumping the 40 is just too much of a rat's nest to try to.
I think you're
We
right,
should
though,
do it
I feel like you
slowly.
have to know what you're looking at first,
You know,
right? And that survey with years of
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
would help with
At some
that.
point that you have, 2 years down the road, you evened everybody out, and now you start talking about bringing your base up a little bit.
I definitely see the benefit of it, but I think it,
It can cost more and
yeah,
well.
and like I said, maybe, I don't know, 500 or something next few years, and if you get another year and add 500 on to that one, where
we could try signing bonuses
That's
in the
right.
beginning here for a couple of years, not to say that we have to stay with those, but if you keep the 37, you could do a signing bonus until you're able to even out the, get everybody back on pace.
Because it makes sense if you're going to make this salary grid that you have to, that you're gonna put everybody onto the same salary grid. If you start that salary grid at 40, that's gonna affect every
It's gonna affect every
buddy,
cell.
and then you're gonna have to figure out where every cell goes, where if you started at where it is now, and then
Well, that's-
create that and put people where they're supposed to be.
But that's the question, do we stick with the current numbers that are in the salary schedule, or do we change those numbers? That's something that we have to decide.
When's the last time they were changed?
I,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then I would say, then I would say they probably should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year was the first change in a number of years.
Well,
But-
didn't you create some? Didn't you
Um,
create like
well,
a sample?
I got a few samples, but, you know, they're increment years, so we get like 1, 4, 7, you know, bigger jumps every couple of years, so kind of slowing down that pace. But I don't think I was waiting to get more definitive parameters, like, are we gonna change the first level, we're gonna change it from 37 to 40, are we gonna do, you know?
I think from listening to what we're saying, we don't want to lower morale.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I like the idea of leaving it where it's at, and then potentially giving signing bonuses at least for a year or two to get, maybe to help
Bring them in the door.
attract people, but, it's really not the lowest one around either, and when you look at benefit pack, I mean, there's a lot to look at in
Well,
terms
and
of
the-
not just the salary schedule.
The CIL will help too, right? If you can offer that for people, that could be an attractive piece, like
Right.
that would have been a deal breaker
Correct.
for me.
Right.
So I think things like that would be a positive addition to that too.
Okay. So, I think we should probably end.
Yep, we probably ought to talk about when we're gonna meet again, and
I do think we're gonna have to start meeting twice.
That's what we were
Yeah.
thinking.
We're all on the
Yeah.
same page, good.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in March, I'm thinking the 14th and the 21st. Spring break is the 26th through the 30th. Would that work for everyone?
14th of the what?
21st.
Brad's gonna be ticked, he's probably got a staff meeting planned out.
He
for
already
sure.
shoot me.
He rescheduled it.
He'll have one booked on him also.
I will try, as I get it's a scanogram of where everybody falls. I will put that out in the drive,
Okay.
and then I will notify everybody when it's out there so that you can take a look at it.
I'll have to ask my social coordinator. That's the idea.
well, good day today, and we're taking some big steps here, so it's kinda exciting to see things start to shape up, so thanks for your good work. Thanks for being part of this. Take a treat for the road and have a good evening.